Hello again from the Register, and today I'm talking rubbish. Well, we all are, really, but not in the way that you're thinking, not in the usual way we talk rubbish. We'll find out about exactly what I'm saying in a minute. What we're really talking about is platform as a service, and there's a lot of hype about the cloud. You tell us that there's a lot of hype about it. So what we're talking to you today about is some of the realities of it. There's a lot of really interesting stuff in today because it is real applications done by real people that are achieving real things, especially for any of you that are joining today who are in the public sector. We know, again, there's a lot of practical problems about moving to the cloud in the public sector. At least that's the perception. So it's a public sector story today. OK, my name's Tim Phillips. You know about me. I need to tell you about your interface. For those of you who haven't been here before, it's pretty easy to use. The most important thing is click on the little thing that lets you ask questions, because there's no good complaining that it was not relevant to you afterwards, which some of you do. What are you doing that for? Ask a question that's relevant to the things that you want to know, and I'll put it to the guys here. You can download. Obviously, you can download our slides to look at later. Fill a bit of spare time on the way home, and you can also get this on demand later on. Remember that to share with your mates. Who would you be asking questions to? Well, let's have a look who our guests are today. And first of all, on the end of the table, the man from Microsoft. It's Michael Newbury. Michael, welcome to the studio.
Mate, hi.
Now, Michael, I remember the last time that I met you, you were briefing some journalists on Azure, and you were shooting them with a little gun with little darts.
It wasn't a little gun.
It was a huge gun.
Thank you.
And one actually hit me. You haven't got your gun with you today, have you?
No, I didn't bring my Nerf gun. I've left that in the office.
Well, that's really good, because, yeah. Because I bought mine.
Oh. Now I feel quite safe.
That's what I bought, the cheap one, that's why. I should have bought the really big one like yours. Oh. I was going to feel better, and now I don't.
Now, you realise next time I come in here, I'll have to bring the biggest Nerf gun I can
You bring
find.
it on, mate. We're ready for it.
This will get serious. Yeah.
I'm deadly serious about this. OK, so my revenge is going to be delayed on that one, but yeah, thank you for joining us today. Now, also joining us is Lewisham's Mr. Rubbish himself, the man who cleaned the borough up, Nigel Tyrell. Nigel, hello.
Good afternoon. How are you?
I'm very well. Now, I tell you, you are Lewisham's Mr. Rubbish. That's not really actually your job title, is it?
Not quite, no. Head of Environment.
Yeah, Head of Environment. And we're here today because you came up with an application.
That's right.
Love Lewisham.
Yes, yep.
And that's a cloud application.
It is now, yes.
And we're going to hear all about the story of that.
Yes, you will.
You're a very technical person, aren't you?
Not too technical.
Yeah, not very
keep to the rubbish.
Not very technical, so it's good. You're flanked by techie guys.
Yeah, that's right.
So this is kind of like, we also talk about how IT talks to the business. Well, we'll find out if that actually happens today in real life. And the man who, last time he was in the studio, I forgot to introduce. The big one. I'll introduce you twice today. It's Dale Vile. It's Dale Vile.
Thanks, Tim.
Yeah.
I've just about recovered from that devastation last time.
It was unfortunate. It was a little rude, but I'm very glad that you're here today. Now, Dale, start us off on this one. When we're talking about platform as a service, what are we talking about?
Okay, well, I think the best place to start actually is with just what is an application platform. Forget the cloud for a minute, because I think when you're talking about developing applications, a lot of what Reg readers tell us is that they actually think in terms of a platform. So, what do you mean by a platform? Well, you put your database management system together with your application server environment, with your web server environment, whatever it happens to be. And some people tell us that they've standardized on a stack from one vendor with all this stuff in it. Other people say they kind of mix and match and build their own platform. But most people out there have the concept of an application platform. So really what we're talking about is taking that, which is quite a familiar thing to do, and actually putting it into the cloud.
Shoving it into the cloud.
Yeah, now there are certain benefits to that, which probably Michael can allude to. But that's basically what platform as a service is about.
But it's not like packaged applications that we're talking about here.
No, it's pretty much the way you would use your in-house application platform and your platform standards. It's for building bespoke applications to meet custom requirements.
And it's not just shoving your data up there, but keeping your applications with
Exactly, yeah. So the whole thing, including development and test, monitoring, management, the whole kit and caboodle.
This is your life now, isn't it, Michael?
Yes, yeah. And it's really cool stuff, because for years and years and years, with what I've been doing in the IT industry, there's always been that sense of people being constrained by the number of servers they had, or the amount of tin they had, the amount of horsepower that was available. Well, now with platforms as service, with Azure, there's as much out there as you want. And in many ways, the challenge for our customers, for the people we talk to, is really, what would you do if you had practically unlimited computing power at your fingertips, available as a utility? So, yeah, it's very cool times.
And Microsoft's contribution to this is Azure, or Azure, as you're calling it. There was a little bit of debate before we came on air as to whether we should pronounce this as Azure or Azure. So when you're putting your questions in, or even now if you want to, please say how you would like us to pronounce it, because nobody knows yet, so we've got a chance to set the standards here. Now, Azure, tell us exactly what that is.
I think of Azure as being the next operating system, if you like, as our operating system for the big data centers in the cloud. Microsoft produced DOS, which was an operating system for a computer that simplified the architecture and hid some of the hardware complexity and gave you a standard, an interface that you could program and develop to. And then there was Windows and Win32, and then there was Windows Server, each in turn taking the next level of computer facilities, of tools that were in the hardware, and giving a programming interface that you could work to. And now you've got Azure, which is the interface, the operating system, if you will, for these big data centers that are out there in the cloud. It gives you something you can work with. It hides some of the complexity of things like scalability and rapid provisioning and all those elements, all those good things that you get from operating in the cloud. But it gives it to you in a familiar environment that you can develop to and work with.
But it doesn't exist yet, though, does it?
It's just out there. It's been commercially available for 12 months.
It's commercially available for 4 months?
For 12 months.
12 months.
Yes, the anniversary was last week.
Oh, congratulations. But in terms of people adoption at the moment, how widespread is it at the moment?
There's approximately 31,000 customers using Azure as of the 1st of February worldwide, in 41 different countries.
Okay, well, let's go to the one that we've got here, from the one country that we've got here. And Nigel, tell us a little bit about Love Lewisham. Take us back to the beginning. When did you come up with this idea? What idea is it that you came up with?
Back in 2004, really, we came up with the idea of posting images from the street concerning environmental issues, graffiti, fly tipping, straight to the web, so that teams back in the office could see what the problem was and dispatch the right resource. So to really cut out the administration of the process, so remove the need to attach a photo to an email and then
fill in a form, send it to someone else, gets routed through those people.
Exactly, so that the people could see what the problem was, and then they could see what we'd done about it. But initially, it was for staff to make it easy for them to report things, and for elected members for them to report things, so that they're not going to forget about the issue when they get home or when they get waylaid in the office. So that makes it very, very easy for them to report things, so that residents don't need to complain so often, or they don't need to be bothered with it. But that was how the concept began.
Yeah, and so it was just a limited number of people, very much an internal application there, limited number of people, manageable size and scale of application then.
Yeah, we tried it out internally for about a year.
Yeah.
Dealt with some of the apprehensions from the operational managers about budgets and being embarrassed about possibility of not being able to respond. And when we nailed those issues down, we launched it to the public in 2005.
So it actually did work. This is the thing. It did simplify things.
Very much so, yes.
Right. In 2005, you made it available to the public, so they could do the same thing then.
That's it. Yeah.
And did they?
They did, yes. lots of members of the public report things to us, and we shifted some of the the regular complainants, if you like, the people that
Right, okay.
the usual suspects, some of the people that would be sending us emails or letters, and it gave us a way of making our response open and public to elected members, politicians. So it stopped that one-to-one route, made it very visible.
They can suck up a huge amount of your time, I guess.
They can, and a lot of the time is administering the issue. So you traditionally, when you contact a public organisation, there are all kinds of protocols about responding within 3 days to the original letter, and then within 10 days or so. So you've got all of those elements, bureaucracy, before you actually get to the resources of doing the job. And most people want to do this simply. They want to report things and they want to see it done or forget about it and go to work.
So say about 2005, this is about the time when people started having phones in their cameras and everything, isn't it?
Yeah.
So suddenly, did you get a lot of people taking pictures of stuff and sending it in to you?
Quite a few. Back then, we still are primarily using Windows mobile devices, but we receive reports from MMS devices. But as the years have moved on, of course, we now capture GPS coordinates, and that makes it easy.
I see, right. So, yeah, so it's pretty easy. So it sort of fills in itself. It's a sort of fills in all the details you need. You know where it is and you know what it is.
Yeah, for my type of services, picture, what the problem is, a GPS location. Doesn't have to be precise, because that combined with a picture and a little bit of text lets you know where the issue is, and the people providing the services know the streets. And that's it, and then the people can carry on to work or get on the train or bus.
Did you not get a bit of pushback internally? People say you can't do it like this. We've got ways in which we do this.
There was a little bit of that. Some concerns, from our friends in the communication parts of the council about publishing stuff online without that going through their editorial control. Little bits of concern from our IT colleagues. A good deal of concern from my service provider colleagues, primarily about, well, what would this mean for demand? What would it mean for budgets? Now, of course, we operate in a political environment, so if we're going to bust the graffiti budget, or if we're going to come close to busting the graffiti budget...
Because people keep sending in stuff that there's a lot of graffiti in Lewisham. I've been there.
Yeah. Well, there's not as much graffiti in Lewisham as
there was. Thanks to you.
but at least...
I know, I have to keep going back now.
Come on.
It's so hard to keep a tag going these days.
Well, it is, and what we found is that they tend to go up to the railway bridges and the areas where it's a bit harder to
give people
to deal
ideas.
With them. They got the ideas already, I'm afraid. Yeah, in terms of having the data to share with the politicians, this is how much graffiti we've removed. These are the before and after pictures of dozens and dozens and dozens of graffiti jobs. They're the people that are going to decide how to allocate the resources, and this has just given us a load of material to share with them. It's fantastic.
It's a smart new sort of application, isn't it, Dale? This isn't traditionally the sort of thing that people have prejudice against public sector. They don't think, they wouldn't come up with something like that. But there's a lot of places that are now.
Yeah, I think so. And I think the general, it's not just public sector, but obviously in public sector where you've got a lot of accountability towards the citizen, big move towards getting the citizen more involved in what goes on with local authorities, etc. Having a direct touch into an IT system, essentially, which is what we're talking about, is going to become more of a requirement. We'll talk about some of the implications of that later, but public-facing applications, I think, are growing in terms of the number of times that's relevant.
Because there is a terrific story. I'm not giving anything away for you. There's a terrific story about how this snowballs that we'll get onto. Quick comment. Please, can we call it Azure and not Azure? It doesn't matter where the emphasis is, but not the Ewer. So Ryan says his prejudice is kind of like aluminium against aluminum. He prefers aluminium. But aluminium was the made-up word, isn't it? Aluminum's the correct one.
I have no idea.
Let's move on.
Way ahead of us there.
Yeah. No, because we put it's the British, because British always assume that we invented the language so all our words are right, but we put the I and aluminium to make it sound like, whereas aluminum is the correct, it was the original. Okay. So what are we talking about here, Michael? Michael, we're talking about what makes this sort of application interesting as a client for a sort of a cloud service application.
There are two things we often talk about people should look to for cloud service kind of applications. Are they scalable, and do they have that sense of need for rapid provisioning, the idea that you want to be able to add things to quickly. And Love Clean Streets, with what they've done, that they take advantage of both those points, in that you've got an application where people wanted to deploy it, and I don't want to get ahead on the story there, but also as demand grows or shrinks, the system does that for you, so you can take advantage of that as well. It was one of the common things that Dale alluded to when you talk about consumer-facing internet workloads. We're seeing an awful lot of those going out onto Azure. Sorry, how should I pronounce
that? That's fine. You can really pronounce it how you like, because it's your train set. But
I mean, conform to Ryan standards.
We're just pressurising you. But yes, and we've seen these going out to Azure, which is kind of like the next step that happened at Lewisham, isn't it? So we're rolling forward a couple of years now.
Yep.
And this was always a hosted service, or did you used to have all the data in-house?
No, it's always been a hosted.
Always hosted.
Yep.
But now Azure, why?
Well, last year we wanted to a tremendous amount of interest from other authorities, from.
They've seen you've done it. It works.
Yeah, lots of interest, and we wanted to be able to share it in a way that would make it easier for them to participate, easier for them to get their own version without having to rebuild the infrastructure, and for them to start from the beginning again, so they could plug into it. We also wanted to make it available for people to use wherever they were living without needing to have a separate customised version. So we wanted to make it fairly open for people. So 2010 we launched it as Love Clean Streets and moved it to Azure. So our IT partner, who's a Microsoft partner, moved it to Azure.
What did your own IT department think of this?
Well, I've got to be careful, because they'll come for me after the.
They're not watching.
This
They're not watching.
No,
Close your ears.
They've been fairly supportive, because they've got a long-standing relationship with Microsoft, so they've not been too upset by this. There've been a few anxieties around, security and all that kind of thing. I think.
Does this mean you sort of routed this around them? You didn't do it directly through them?
Well, we did body swerve them to some
extent.
Yes, we did.
Okay, this is one, Dale, pick this up, because this is something that worries IT departments, that cloud applications are going to bypass them and some things are going to get missed. I'm not saying they did get missed, but some things might be.
Yeah, I think it's an interesting question, because one of the things that we've been looking quite a bit at is what are the implications of scaling up your use of the cloud. And the interesting thing is you can get away with it for one or two discrete apps, but as soon as you start sort of really going for it in terms of using the cloud, whether it's platform as a service or software as a service or whatever, these things might be inherently secure, but you've got to think about things like, well, how do you manage your security policy across several different applications? Maybe as simple as, your Active Directory being applied to various different environments. So when you think about it, actually, as soon as you start moving beyond point solutions, you get back to traditional IT problems. So IT skills don't go, or the need for IT skills don't go away. And let's remember as well that platform as a service is about an application platform, so you've still got a full development life cycle, and I believe you did have some technical research involved in this whole thing.
No, we did. I mean,
so all those design skills and everything else are still very, very important.
Yeah, I think the best way to describe the relationship with our internal IT department was there was a good deal of creative tension.
Creative
with
tension.
them.
I like this.
Yeah, well, there was.
Yeah.
They've
No.
been generally happy to let me test the water and see how.
But
it
not
works.
Yeah, I mean, to be fair, you did have a partner. You didn't
did
just
have
make
a-
this up in
yeah.
your bedroom.
Oh
You had-
no! I couldn't put anything on Azure by myself.
No.
I've got a good partner.
No. Like when you're working, you're going to be working on some pretty big applications for these sort of things amongst these people that you're dealing with. I mean, I know, as I'm talking to you before, you've been dealing with sort of banks and people like that. Is this something that gets rooted around the IT department very often? Are the IT department cynical about what you're doing?
No, it really depends on the nature of the organisations. You've got large organisations that have established IT infrastructure, enterprise systems. They'll already be looking at things like private cloud anyway. So the integration of public cloud systems like Azure, the creation of what we're calling hybrid systems that have a bit of on-premise application, your existing application, with a bit of stuff in the cloud, combining that into one system, or expanding your on-premise systems into the cloud in that hybrid strategy. That kind of thing is being done with IT departments. But then you get the organisations that don't have the existing IT department or the IT infrastructure that want the same benefits that you get with big IT without necessarily having to build that infrastructure from the ground up, without having to invest in machine rooms and data centres and all those elements. And that's what public cloud, that's what Azure gives them. That the benefit, if you will, of the data centre of the big IT, but available as a utility, available as they need it when they need it.
Yeah, what do Reg readers are... They're not convinced by this yet.
Well, I think we just need to be clear about what we're talking about here, because I think it's easy to get misled when we talk about small organisations not needing IT anymore and this kind of stuff. Someone somewhere needs to take care of what is it that you're going to base this new system on, whatever it has to be.
Didn't say the small organisations don't need IT. I said they can get the same benefits as large organisations with the...
So to put it into perspective, we've researched the Reg readership quite a bit around things like virtualisation, for instance, and we know from that people are sick of maintaining huge numbers of Windows servers in particular, which is why they're consolidating and trying to pull together as much as possible. So it's not as if people out there love patching servers and love doing all that sort of day-to-day management work, which can be a bit soul-destroying sometimes. That's the piece which I think is diminished in terms of this. But actually, as soon as you start, I agree with Michael totally. When you're moving things across boundaries and you've got a bit running in the cloud and a bit running in-house, and most applications tend to integrate with other applications, the job of administering that, securing it, making sure policy is properly coordinated across it, troubleshooting and supporting across it, actually becomes more difficult. So anyone who runs away with the idea that somehow cloud simplifies the job of IT is not really understanding the implications. It might do in one isolated case with your first application, you can get away with it. But as soon as you start really taking the stuff on board, all those disciplines become doubly important. They don't diminish.
Oh, yeah. I'd agree with you that public cloud is just IT done in a slightly different place. It's new stuff being done in a new way, out there in the cloud rather than here on premise. But all the disciplines, things like failover, things like architecting stuff correctly,
Absolutely.
security,
Huge numbers of benefits.
all that stuff
Yeah.
is still there that you've got to think about.
And these are the things that IT guys, Reg readers, tell us they don't actually like doing that much. Dealing with those.
It's got to be done though, and it's got to be done properly. That's the thing.
It's got to be done properly. So having someone else do it, having Microsoft take care of a lot of that stuff for you, is great, because you don't want to do it anyway. So you might as well let them do that piece and get on with the.
There's almost a mantra that it enables IT professionals to focus on the creative business problem-solving stuff, and hopefully, as you said, take some of the drudgery out of what they're doing.
Yeah.
And when you put Azure together, then as this range of possible things that you can offer through Azure, what are the things that are really grabbing people's attention then?
Well, Dale alluded to consumer-facing web-scale workloads. this idea of a system that might have to deal with one person or 1 million people, that scalability. We're seeing a lot of those kinds of systems going out there, whether they're in regular retail or whether they're in areas like social gaming. We're seeing, at the other extreme, we're seeing a lot of high-performance computing workloads, particularly things like risk analytics, Monte Carlo calculation, the traditional stuff that used to be the domain of the HPC industry. Those kinds of workloads are going out there as well.
Those are things that are being shifted out to people like Amazon and those sort of things as well, aren't they? Yeah. Are you offering something? What are you offering that they're not? That's going to bring that stuff to you?
With platform as a service, you get an infrastructure that's been optimized to run on the cloud. So you get an operating system, Windows Azure. You get a database, SQL Azure. You get App Fabric, which is the connectivity, the plumbing that holds it all together. And you get those pieces optimized and built that will automatically scale out, that look after things like patching and the administration, but integrate with your enterprise environment, things like Active Directory, Federation. And all that comes together so that you can focus on the business logic rather than on patching the operating system or looking after things at that level.
Yeah, Nigel, here's the question that it won't be a big surprise for you. Where's your data gone? Where does it live now? And how do you control that?
Well, we establish security protocols with our IT supplier. And, as far as I've never seen the physical storage of the data wherever it's been hosted, this is really no change. And, I'm entirely happy that the data's secure. The kind of stuff we're storing, we're not people's credit card details or the housing benefit details. So this is fairly tame stuff. But the compliance with security protocols is as good as it's ever been. And, I can only see it being more secure.
And how do you control it? Because again, a lot of people, specifically if you want public sector business, you can't move their data outside Europe.
Well, we don't. When somebody sets up an Azure application, they have the option of saying, okay, I want my data stored here, in this place, and in the event of a failover scenario, I want it to roll over to this second place. And people can say, okay, I want my data stored within the European boundaries. Mm-hmm. So they have that control over where that goes, and I think that's one of the differentiators of Azure.
Yeah, we get a lot of response about this, don't we?
Yeah, it's one of the biggest questions, actually. Where's my data? What's happening to it? What is the service provider going to do with it? So, I mean, just really that simple ability to designate a geographic location is pretty important to lots of companies, not just public sector.
There are, and it's quite surprising that there are some cloud providers who are not being especially straightforward. They're not giving answers that are keeping our readers happy. When they're asking them, they're not getting straight answers.
No, that's right. And we've written a lot of stuff around this. I mean, you may have read some of the stuff that I've written on the register around doing due diligence on cloud providers. If that kind of stuff is important to you, make absolutely sure you know what the policy is. I mean, you may not necessarily always want to go and eyeball their data center, but at least know what it is they're committing to you from a contractual point of view.
It brings forward, Michael, this idea of trust. They have to trust you. Now, one of some of Dale's statistics that I've seen, because I do read your stuff, and some of Dale's statistics I've seen is that that question of trust is more easy for companies to deal with who have some experience in this. And that companies that don't have experience are very risk-averse about this. What do you do to change their minds then? I mean, some people, you just can't change their minds.
Yes, but it's a management issue. You've got to look at what you're investing currently in your on-premise environment and then saying, okay, we're Microsoft. We've got a huge investment in online services that we ourselves use. Email services like Hotmail and Hosted Exchange. You've got the search engines, things like Bing. You've got the online gaming environment, Xbox Live. All of that stuff is running in our data centers. That's our core business asset. And we're saying those same technologies, that same track record is what we're making available to customers who want to use our facilities, who want to use our data centers to run their applications. and it's critical that our own internal assets, things like Microsoft.com, stay up and stay running. And that same investment that keeps that going is what we offer with Azure. So in terms of that trust, that confidence that it will be there, we rely on it. It works. We'd like to share that with others.
I got another question for you, because you're a techie person, so you like this. How do you delete data? And what's the, how do you know that you've deleted data?
How do you know? The data is deleted and released and overwritten pretty much exactly the same as it is in a Windows server. So it's a block that has a pointer that's removed and then overwritten in time.
This comes up again and again, doesn't it? To have to know that once something's deleted, it has been deleted, it has been overwritten. It cannot be discovered in any other way.
And there is a virtual machine container. And we've actually got a white paper, or several white papers on our website that go into this in gory detail and actually describe that. And if a reader wants me to forward those links through, I can afterwards.
As we could spend quite a lot of time discussing this, couldn't we? But I mean, these are important things that the same objections tend to come up over and over again for you, don't they?
Yeah, and we have security standards and people who accredit our data centres to make sure they comply with these standards for exactly this kind of reason. Partly it's self-interest. We want to keep our own data centres secure, let's be honest. And partly it's also we want to be able to prove it to our customers that what we are doing does conform to data standards. Yeah. And please, if we should be distributing the white papers that go through this kind of security analysis on our data centres, the physical infrastructure, things like how do we delete data, or even things like the encryption standards that we use. One of the cool new features, and I'm about to have a geek out, is that we announced...
I can see it coming.
Yeah, exactly. My face changes colour. Yeah. At PDC in about October timeframe, we announced the beta program for something called Azure Connect, which provides IPsec encryption from the customer data centre to the cloud, so that the entire transaction is now encrypted and kept securely, which I think is an incredibly cool feature. And it's one of the things you would have taken for granted, that, okay, I'm moving data between my data centre up into the cloud and back again, and I assume it's encrypted all the way. Well, it is, and we can talk to Azure Connect and those features, and now I'll stop.
No, that's fine. Actually, that was a good geek out, because there are a lot of readers that are looking for this, and we do make some stuff available. Some of your white papers are available on the register. If there is particular stuff that you're interested in getting, then just let us know, because you've got a direct line to me now, so then I can nag afterwards. We can't get it to you before the end of the broadcast, but we can make sure that it's available on the reg, and we deal with it. We do read everything. We do listen. We do read the comments on that you put on the features on this as well, so we know the stuff that you're after. And talking of that, Nigel, what sort of agreements do you have? Do you have agreements of guaranteeing uptime and things like that?
Yeah, all of that was part of the procurement process when we moved Lewisham onto Azure through our IT provider. So and it's been fine. It's performed really well. It's much faster than the previous application, and it's been up there when other council systems haven't. We just the council moved their data centre a couple of weeks back, and for a while our Lewisham app was our only way of maintaining the service.
That was the council.
Absolutely, for 4 days. That was the council. So
we get all sorts of extra requests on in that case. Dale, I talked about it briefly before. If people don't trust the potential for these applications, is there something is there an argument for saying that you could sort of dip your toe in the water, stick a little bit of something up there, see how that works for you? Does that tell you anything that you need to know?
Yeah, I think so. It's all about keeping perspective on this, because I think what we hear time and time again is, generally speaking, IT infrastructures out there are not perfect. Surprise, surprise. People do struggle with basic things like provisioning servers for an ad hoc application. can take anything from 2 weeks to 10 weeks, depending on your environment, to get a new server in for a new application requirement, whatever. So so there's that. There's also, people talk about the fragmentation in their management infrastructure, and security sometimes I'm not 100% sure of in some areas. They've got the important stuff locked down, but there's kind of a little bit of a wing and a prayer with some of the other things. So it's not a perfect environment that people are working with at the moment. So I think when you're thinking about the cloud option, you've got to think about it in that context. And if you do that, it's interesting actually. I mean, we got some feedback from Reg readers quite recently of people who said, well, actually, when we moved stuff into the cloud, we suddenly realised that it was more secure, more robust, and we could manage it better.
You often say this. People tend to overestimate how good their data centre really is.
That's true. And it's not to say that everything out there is falling to pieces. It's not. Obviously, people are doing a good job. But people have accumulated a lot of stuff over the years, so there's an inherent level of complexity and fragmentation. And, there's one... I mean, Michael earlier on was talking about big applications, where you might want to let them grow with lots of horsepower and stuff. But actually, there's the opposite end of the spectrum, which I think is equally as important, which is when you get that request in from a department to build a specific app for, half a dozen people or whatever, traditionally what you've done is you've gone out and bought a server, you've stuck Windows Server on it, SQL Server, done some development work, and, maybe a web server as well if it's externally facing, and deployed it. And just getting that infrastructure in place takes time, costs money. You don't have to maintain the thing. And this is all the stuff that people have been cleaning up with their consolidation exercises using virtualization. And another way of thinking about this is maybe an environment to start sticking some of that stuff in where you've got fairly small-scale requirements and you don't want to cluster up your data center with them. It needn't always be critical. As Nigel was saying, a lot of the stuff you do isn't mission-critical data. So if you do have a few concerns, try something which isn't that sensitive. Get comfortable with the way the security works, the policy management works, etc., etc.
But you still have to deal with contractual risk, and here's the thing. Yes. So who takes the risk in these things? How much risk is appropriate for you to take?
We have an SLA in the contracts for Azure. We sort of talk about a 3
What's in the SLA?
It talks about, okay, this is the uptime that we'll provide, the 3 nines uptime. Beyond that, in terms of the details of the SLA, I'd have to go through it. Yeah, exactly.
Probably not that thick, isn't it?
Nah, it's not that bad.
Okay, not that thick. But so you have that. How much risk is... This is something that worries our readers a great deal. Is who is assuming the risk? If something goes wrong, who can be punished?
We provide a platform, and we take responsibility for that platform for Azure itself.
Yeah.
In terms of the business logic that's built on that, I imagine in Lewisham's example that would reside with the partner who built the app.
Yeah, I mean that's pretty much as it goes. The agreement we've got with our IT provider, but there's not been an issue. I mean, the previous solution was hosted very well. All we've really noticed since we've moved to Azure is faster performance. And
you actually get faster performance now.
Oh yes, yeah, and it's much faster. So we've not had any issues with the app being down at all. And compared to internally hosted apps, like our own email system, and we're often getting nagged to remove data, delete files and things from our email system. So none of these services are without problems, and Azure has performed really well, and we're entirely.
I think this question of risk is it's worth sort of bearing in mind where you are in the systems stack view of the world when you talk about cloud, because at one level you've got what people will call it infrastructure as a service or infrastructure services. Basically, you're just renting server space, storage space, whatever. You're in complete control of what you put on those servers. So you're totally responsible for your data. Okay, there's the physical responsibility the service provider has to keep the infrastructure running, but you manage everything at that kind of level. When you move up into, let's go to the other extreme. With software as a service, actually there's quite a lot of risk, because you're not only relying on the provider to manage your data, manage the environment, etc., you're relying on them to keep up with your business needs, because unless they release a new feature, you don't have access to it. It's not like
everything with them. They don't keep the application up to date.
Exactly. So you can't suddenly decide. Oh, it's kind of changing a little bit with over time in terms of development tools and stuff that accompany software as a service kind of plays. But largely speaking, it's not like the old days where you could just sort of get a developer in and bespoke something. You can't do that with a software as a service environment. Platform as a service is somewhere in the middle. So Microsoft provides the database management system, the transaction environment, and web serving environment, and the rest of it. So they take care of that from a sort of management, patching, maintenance point of view. But you're still responsible for how you use that. So you design the application, you actually manage what happens.
Right, and that has to be explicit, because it's where if there's a problem, it's where that problem came from is going to be the important thing.
Exactly. So if the database serving element goes down, that's obviously Microsoft's responsibility. If someone has screwed up a bit of code and you just hose the some key data, that's actually your problem. It's not Microsoft's.
So let's get on to a nice element of this. Nigel, and what you managed to do with this when you got interest from other people. You already said other people got interested in this. Do you share amongst local government?
Yeah, and increasingly because of the financial climate, there's the need to share rather than reinvent. And people are interested in the concept. Now, time's gone by, people say, well, why don't we commission the same kind of thing and rebuild it? Now people want to have that software, but they don't want to recommission. So it's very easy to reskin an application like this and use all of the functionality, but still get the benefits of a local app. So, Love Northumberland or One Clean Leicester, some of the other apps.
Let's have a look at that. We've got pictures of those, because there's the Lewisham sort of picture there, and so so who's this? This is Love Clean Streets. Where does this?
Well, Love Clean Streets is the generic version of Love Lewisham.
It's
so
a sort of a white label version.
Yeah, anyone can come and play with that and use the Love Clean Streets mobile apps to post data wherever they are.
It was a grey label version. I'm on fire today. There we go. So then we've got a Love Clean London.
Yep,
so
that's right. Well, 2 weeks ago, the London Mayor launched Love Clean London. So, London Mayor came in a couple of years ago with a manifesto commitment to make it easy for people to report things online. Now, they could have recommissioned something and rebuilt a separate service. So this fine example of them choosing to go with the infrastructure that was there, customise it for a London scenario. So we've got just over 500 days or so to the Olympics. Now there's a need to focus attention on making our city even better for visitors. So Love Clean London's a good way of doing that without incurring...
So expanded yours...
additional cost.
To anywhere, yeah. So immediately that's a whole lot of extra traffic that's coming in.
Yeah, potentially huge. And these things, our experience from the Lewisham perspective is it takes a while to grow that kind of traffic, because there are a few, people need to download the app, then find something to report, and even your most obsessive complainant's not going to find things every few hours. So you're reasonably safe.
Careful what you give people. I know what you're saying though. So this view that you've got on Love Clean London here, where you can see the map with all the little pins sticking in it. This is one of the attributes of it, where you can just have a look and see what's being reported. Can anyone see that?
Yeah, this is on the public site. So this is using Silverlight to display recent reports, and people can drill into those reports and see the issue that's been reported. There's also, I'm not sure if you can see it on the slide, but a pivot view element to this, so people can see the proportions of graffiti and mess around with selecting various categories and see what's going on in which particular ward. So that makes the data much more useful immediately for residents and for elected councillors and people like that.
Right, so it means it can be reused for a lot of different, not literal constituencies, but different types of people who want to look at it for different things. Yeah.
Well, it makes what we're doing in terms of providing these services much more visible to people, and they can see the kind of responses, or they can see what's what we've done about it. See, for example, you might want to say, well, I wonder what the proportions of fly posting are in our ward, and has that changed? Is it worse than it is in another borough? And you can make those kind of very quick comparisons using the pivot view tool if people want. And there are more sophisticated tools behind the scenes.
I suppose we get to a point there that we've got if we have applications like this that are being used in lots of different places, you've got all the data. Obviously within the limits of what data can be shared and made available, then it creates a sort of a reporting tool in itself where you can make comparisons over time between places. Yeah. Find out whether Lewisham is in fact tidier than Oldham.
Well, you can pick up using this. Take the Oldham example. Oldham have been using this for a number of years. We had their own version several years ago. What we saw from their use was that they roped in the fire service, and fire crews have been reporting community fire safety issues. Now that hadn't been something we'd approached in Lewisham. We'd used it with safer neighbourhoods teams and the police, so they were reporting stuff. So we were very quickly able to see what their particular flavour, and that's really useful. It's really quite exciting to see what other people's problems are and how they're dealing with it. Leicester have gone deep into the public involvement, public consultation. I keep seeing them posting images of ward meetings, and that's exciting, seeing how the different flavour of them using the same tool, but how that's being applied in Leicester, and the differences from Lewisham. A recent example from the Love Clean London, we had a post from Richmond, and it was someone had moored their boat in the wrong place. So
oh, that's very Richmond for anyone.
We don't get that.
For all our non-Brits who are tuned in.
It's not something that I see reported from Deptford or something. That's great.
Isn't it? And I also noticed that for most places they're looking for the clean, but in Oldham they're only looking to make it tidy. And sorry if you're from, and also Northumberland, which last time I was there was pretty clean to start with, but it's getting better.
That's obviously a much more rural environment, so it's interesting to see the kind of things that are being reported there. I suppose potholes are more of an issue on some of the rural roads, but you're in immediate contact with other service providers and colleagues, and you can see their kind of experiences. And it's not just a case of reporting problems. Earlier on in the city, walking up to this meeting, they've got gum bins on their outposts, and you think, wow, that's a good idea, to stop gum being trodden into. I wonder how that works. Now, you can immediately share that kind of thing. In Westminster, they've got timed collections for trade waste. Now, you can post pictures of that just as a kind of note to yourself and your colleagues. Say, well, that's a good idea, what they're doing in this part of London, and share it. So, there are a variety of uses for this kind of stuff.
And any interest from outside the UK, for example, from the Caribbean, perhaps?
No. Yeah, well, leading question.
I just make you think I know the answer or something.
We're working with Commonwealth local government and currently with Kingston in Jamaica, which made me think of the Kingston connection. So colleagues from Kingston and St Andrews are going to have a version of this up and running in May. And to me, it's a very exciting way of sharing something. They've not got a deep IT infrastructure, so the option for them of building this and hosting it internally isn't there. But this does give them access.
And the serious point from this, Michael, is that when you have applications like this that can be shared, there's potential for you to build up a library of custom apps that can be appropriately shared with the right people at the right time, but they're guaranteed a similar level of performance for them because you're taking care of the infrastructure.
Oh, yes. And we're seeing interesting changes in our traditional ecosystem, that customers are developing applications on Azure and then are sharing it, and you're seeing supply chain integration with customers sharing their applications either upstream with their suppliers or downstream with their customers, or you're seeing people developing applications and then making that data available to other people in a controlled way. There's almost that sense of, with the cloud, we've now got this wonderful shared computing facility that people can bring a bit of data or a bit of their application logic or whatever it is and share that with other people in a controlled manner. So,
Nigel, how do you work out the cost for this and the return on that cost? That's a question that's just come in.
Well, this has been provided to us by a third-party IT provider, so they're giving this to us at a fixed cost, a fixed monthly.
So it's a fixed monthly cost, and they handle the relationship with Microsoft?
They do, yeah. Yeah, this is them choosing Microsoft. They're a Microsoft partner, and Lewisham have got a tradition of using Microsoft kit, so we're an early adopter on a number of things from the IT department's perspective. But it's the IT provider has set up the arrangement with Azure, and we get a fairly straightforward billing.
Do you make any money out of selling it to Oldham and places
like
that?
It's not Lewisham doing the selling, it's the IT partner that's responsible. Our public sector part of the deal is that there's a free available Love Clean Streets app to share, along with Love Clean London and all of the mobile apps that go with it. So his business interests or the ability to resell branded versions supports this whole public infrastructure, which is great. Otherwise, we'd have to pay for it and foot the Azure bill, or someone in the public sector.
Someone's going to have to pay the bill.
Have to pay for it.
Dale, the reason we've got this question is some Mark saying that it's quite hard to work out in advance how much cloud services will cost. I mean, especially if they take off. It's one of the problems of success.
Yeah. Unfortunately, at the moment, I don't know what Michael's view is on this, but it is quite unpredictable. We still haven't seen the street price settle for different types of cloud services, whether it be an email box or whether it be a price per sort of compute cycle or storage unit or whatever. Over the next, I mean, the only thing for sure is that the prices are going to come down. So whatever you're looking at the moment is probably worst case. There are things that when we've spoken to people about certain types of applications where they're moving large volumes of data around, you got to watch out for things like transport costs, which can be a killer. The devil is in the detail with this stuff, so you really do have to pay attention to the charging. It's impossible to sort of make general comments because all of the providers are doing something different at the moment.
Yeah,
but it will settle down over the course of the next 12 months.
Now, you came up, Dale, with your 1+2 test. For all the people who are wondering whether or not it's a good idea to use platform as a service.
Yeah.
And so, so I asked you, because I hate it when people from Freeform Dynamics say it depends. Yeah. And you've been very good.
This is the closest I'm going to get on this one.
You've been very good at not doing the it depends on this. Now, explain your 1+2 test for whether or not you've got something that's amenable to platform as a service.
Okay, well, as you know, Tim, you'd never get me to advocate everything moving to the cloud or anything near that. So the big question is, what does it make sense to think about putting into the cloud, and in this particular case, into a platform as a service kind of environment? So what we've got here, our platform as a service is mostly about building bespoke applications to deal with customer requirements. So the one bit of the 1+2 is that first point there.
Got to be custom.
If you've got a custom application, an option is to put it in the cloud. If you look at some of those other things, outward-facing accessibility, so whether that's like in the Lewisham case, where you've got consumers actually logging in or accessing the system through smartphones, or it might be a supply chain situation or a partner situation, where you've got external. It
would be much less compelling if it was still only internal people from Lewisham.
Exactly, yeah. And there you're down to things like provisioning. How easy is it for a user to get access to it? Yeah. And platform as a service tends to make that really easy. And particularly if there's a self-service element to it. So, anything to do with, you don't want someone to have to request access to the system. You want them to set themselves up. And these environments tend to be very good at facilitating that.
Yeah.
Unpredictable loads. I mean, there's two aspects to unpredictable loads. One of them is, Michael was alluding to, what would you do if you had an infinite amount of computing power? Sometimes you're thinking about bursty applications, like, web-facing applications where they might need a lot of horsepower just for a few hours, and then they might settle down again, and they might peak at some other time. But other times you just don't know what the uptake's going to be. You know, like in the Lewisham case, you know, you're deploying something, you want to start small, it may capture people's imagination and take off. You know, particularly with externally facing stuff, you don't want to have sized your server environment assuming that you're going to get this amount of traffic, and then ultimately, so it gives you that kind of flexibility. So if you've got unpredictable loads of one kind, that's another thing. And requirement
reuse and sharing, yeah.
Yeah, so I mean, we talked about your application being shared, Nigel, but you know, just think about that supply chain context. If you know, I spent a lot of time looking at how you get supply chain partners hooked into sort of electronic trading and that kind of stuff. Well, actually having a hosted app and just publishing it to your key supply chain partners is a quick way around that. So, you know, that kind of...
So your rule of thumb is to have that number one, the customer bespoke, and two of the others.
If there's only two of the others, you've probably got a good candidate to think about putting it in the cloud. It's a general rule of thumb.
All four of the others should be there already.
Yeah, probably.
That's it. That's pretty useful. You should be an analyst, you know.
So that's it.
You know, you've got a future in that sort of job. So that's it. Who's taking this stuff? Where are you concentrating selling this to people when you go and plug it to them, Michael? I imagine that's a big bit of your job at the moment, isn't it?
Yeah, but we're seeing uptake across the board. It was one of the things we're chatting about beforehand, that 12 months ago we wouldn't necessarily have predicted that maybe the public sector would be a big user of public cloud. But they are. It's out there. We're seeing that in our enterprise customers, in our largest category of customers. We're seeing a lot of uptake in that mid-market space, in the people who don't necessarily have the large data infrastructure. We're seeing uptake in the areas that are unpredictable. Social gaming being a wonderful example of people who are using this stuff there. We're also seeing uptake in areas that are predictably unpredictable. You know, the end of month spike, the pre-Christmas spike, those kinds of retail and consumer
And
areas.
is it with people who really feel more comfortable because they come from a Microsoft background, so they need that Microsoft-style environment?
We are seeing people who've got .NET infrastructures and skills moving across, but we're also seeing Java workloads, all sorts of different development environments. Because Azure, at the end of the day, is an operating system, an environment where you can run a workload, and it does support things like Java as well as the traditional Microsoft environments.
And another question, I'm all questions for you in this little burst. Someone's pointed out, you were mentioning 3 nines reliability before. Is it just 3 nines that you're offering to everybody? Because that limits what some people are going to put up there, doesn't it?
It's an evolving infrastructure. We're offering right now what we can.
What you're offering now is 3 nines.
Yes.
But in the future,
it may well
maybe
move,
4.
See what
3.5 nines.
Or maybe through our partners and through what they offer as well.
How can that change things? Because at the end, you're administering the data centre.
Yes, but we have partners who build solutions on top of that, and we have also announced something called the Azure Appliance, which effectively is a combination of hardware and software that enables a partner to go out and do this under their control.
Where are you going next with this one then, Nigel? Is there more that you can do? Are other people in Lewisham interested in this, different departments?
Well, the Chief Exec was very interested in our pivot view presentation of the environmental...
This is the sort of information that public sector has to get out there now, isn't it?
It is, and this would obviously be a good way of displaying the spend data that the current government seem to be interested in. You know, I think over £500 we've got to publish. Our Chief Exec was particularly excited about making it available in that kind of format rather than just as an Excel sheet, so that people could, mess around and see what's being spent where. I think there are a variety of these kind of apps that are going to pop up over the next few months, few years. But making it visible and sharing it is, I'm clearly interested in street scene activities, and this works great for us, and we're sharing it with others in other countries.
I was going to say, you're interested in creating clean Istanbul.
Absolutely.
because we have an inquiry here, if you want to follow that up. If anything comes out of it and there's any money made, I want to see something of that. I don't care how much, and I don't want to break any laws, because I'm on camera. I don't want to break any laws, at least nothing can be traced back to me.
Yeah, that's right.
We've got to be rewarded for what we've done here. It's a community activity, after all. But but you think that this will be seriously, that there's much more opportunity for this to be taken up by other, in slightly different applications and different places around the world?
Yeah. I mean, that's already happening. Housing providers, people that want to use the infrastructure but in a slightly different way. All the functionality, but use it slightly different. And as far as Istanbul or any other of your viewers want to post stuff to us, whatever it is, post it and say hi, and just post an image, because it's great seeing stuff pop up from other parts of the country or other parts of the world. It is quite exciting. We're something from Norway, snow.
Norway has a reputation for cleanliness anyway, and seeing that the snow does that for a country.
Yeah, there's categories.
Before we stereotype any more people because of where they live in the world, Dale, can you just wrap up with us? What we've got here, though, is a nice story that spread from sort of quite a small base, and it's gradually spread out, and it's become something that is. That's just extremely useful for people to simplify their lives, and a useful architecture for doing it. Is this where platform as a service is, rather than the sort of slightly more overheated pitch that we hear for cloud a lot?
Yeah, I think so, and I'd certainly encourage people to start with getting their feet wet with that constant stream of applications that IT departments get requests for. So rather than go out and buy another server or provision another virtual server even, and stick whatever platform stuff you need on it, try this kind of stuff. I think it's a case of just becoming familiar and working out where it's applicable and where it's not. And as I said earlier on, I don't think this is the answer to everyone's problems in every situation, but certainly, I mean, there's some good stuff that we talked about, and in lots of situations it can take some of the pain out of doing IT.
Thank you very much, guys. We reached the end of our hour. Thanks very much for questions, staying involved with this. We've got the links here up on the screen for if you want to catch up on loving clean things. I've got one just as a souvenir. Thank you very much, Nigel. Be careful, because it's loaded. It's primed to go off at any minute, and it's quite dangerous.
This for you to.
I think it's for you.
It's for you. It's for you to handle Microsoft if you get any trouble. It's the only language they understand.
Yeah, violence.
Thanks, guys. That's the end of our Regcast. So we'll be back with another one soon. And tell us what you liked and didn't like afterwards. And tune in for our next Regcast. I've been Tim Phillips. Goodbye.